Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. We have Jeb Blount and Will Frattini on today's session. They're going to be discussing future-proofing sales, how to prepare, pivot, and sell in a recession. We'll kick things off today with our experts pretty soon, but first I wanted to cover off on some housekeeping notes. If you are experiencing any issues, technical difficulties throughout today's session, please feel free to pose your concerns in the Q&A box on your screen. We'll do our best to go ahead and address those for you, but a quick tip is typically if you exit and then rejoin today's session, that should fix your problem, but just let us know there. Also, please feel free to use that handy Q&A box to ask Jeb and Will any of those questions that might pop up along the way. We'll definitely see if we can answer some of those throughout the presentation, but we hopefully will also have an allotment of time at the end to get through a couple of those. Next, the session is being recorded, so live as we speak, so you'll receive that recording within 48 hours of today's session. If you want to, look back on it, share it around. And lastly, ZoomInfo Safe Harbor Statement. ZoomInfo is a publicly traded company. This presentation may contain forward-looking statements. Any buying decision you make should be based only upon currently available products and offerings. Our complete Safe Harbor Statement is linked in the additional content block if you would like to go ahead and take a deeper dive into that. Awesome. And also, Jeb is a best-selling author of his most recent book, Selling in a Crisis. The link is also in that additional content block there. So go ahead and check that out. It's available on Amazon. A quick reminder of, why everyone sort of registered for today's session. Just a quick refresher here. Sales is tough enough as it is, and prolonged economic uncertainties make that job even harder. Budgets are reduced or eliminated. Companies evaluate prospective new products with greater skepticism or postpone those investments entirely. Your warm leads leave for safer industries, or they join the ranks of the recently laid off. With the odds stacked against them, how can you, as a sales professional, navigate this economic uncertainty and hit your number during a downturn? All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and welcome Jeb and Will. How are you guys doing today?
Awesome.
Great.
Here for it. Good to see y'all. Excited for another session today.
Yeah, I know. This is a great kickoff for the new year of our webinar programming. So really excited to have you both here. We'll go ahead and dive in right now. Just kind of setting the scene, I wanted to ask Jeb and Will here, what are some of the trends you guys are seeing in the marketplace right now in terms of selling, especially, within the past few months or so?
Jeb, you want to take that first?
Sure. I think what we're seeing is that every industry and every sector is experiencing something different. And this is why when we talk about selling in a crisis, really what we're talking about is selling in volatility. So some sectors are having no issues whatsoever. They see the economic downturn that we are moving into as opportunity. Other sectors, think real estate, mortgage, those sectors are getting hit really hard. They're battered by that. Financial planning, for example, is getting battered by that a good bit. So there's everybody's experiencing something different. And also, by the way, this is region by region. So as you start moving regions in North America, regions in APAC, your regions in EMEA, in South America, you're seeing that everybody's having something different happening. So for sales teams, the trend that I'm seeing is there's a lot of wait and see. I'm trying to figure out exactly what's going to happen, and that's a good thing. And I'll throw this back to Will with this statement that the good thing here is that we haven't dived completely into utter chaos. We are living in volatility, so you still have time to get your ducks in a row, so that you're prepared to weather the storm that is certainly coming. But you can weather it, rise above it, and you'll come out on the other side. We always have the other side where you're whole and you're cranking.
Yeah, and as Becca said, I mean, we're in a quiet period before we release earnings, so I can't speculate on what ZoomInfo's trends are for our internal team. But what I can say is a lot of our customers are looking long and hard at the different systems that their teams use every single day, and how many of them or how much time is being spent within them are actually driving value that they can quantify. The weird thing is, and Jeb's known this for more years, and I say that as a compliment to Jeb than I do, and more downturns and recessions. But professionally, I've lived through a couple and worked through a big one at ZoomInfo. And in 2020, this exactly was the theme. Once everybody realized that we, didn't have to Clorox our vegetables and we could still order off Instacart, and the things started to happen again, we could work from home. A lot of businesses were looking at, well, I have to think about, if we never go back to normal, what's the stuff I wasted money on that I didn't care about? And that, for anyone on this webinar that sells anything, a solution, a service, a product, building a relationship right now that's built on trust and built on efficiency and built on value long term is really the trend I'm seeing folks pile all their time into. The nuance there, which is interesting, we'll talk a lot about it today, is if I'm a salesperson, which I am, and so is Jeff, I know I'm going to probably be spending a lot of my time with people that want to spend time with me. And so Jeb and I have talked about qualifying opportunities out of the pipe so many different times, but the trend of people are ready to qualify themselves out of your pipeline is ever present right now. Within our customers, they're telling us, I'm not going to spend time on something that I can't get value from quickly. And it's eerily similar to about May, June, July, Jeb, I would say, yep. 2020, where people were really just ruthlessly focused on, how do I focus on investing in stuff that's going to get me value, hedge my risk, right? And drive more use of that thing or more dollars back from that thing faster. And the nice thing is there's a lot of really brilliant companies that are usually born out of or developed out of recessionary climates. And that's kind of what foundationally a lot of great companies are built on. So it's an exciting time, if I'm a salesperson, which I am, to be selling right now.
And what that certainly says is that, especially around companies that are only going to spend money on things that they can gain value from, as decision-making moves up in organizations into the executive ranks, which it will during the recession because companies are going to take on less risk. What that means is that as a sales professional, and this is a great habit to begin adopting, you should always have this habit, but we've had such a good run over the last couple of years that so many salespeople have fallen out of this. I was having a conversation yesterday, Will, with an executive at a top 30 firm in their industry. This is a massive company. And the executive said, it was just too easy. We just quit doing all of the things that we should be doing. And one of those things they kept coming back to is we're not asking enough questions. We're not doing discovery. So right now, it's a good time to stop and think, okay, am I asking the right questions? Am I asking questions around what are the business outcomes that they're looking for? How do we measure success with this organization? What are their big initiatives? If they're running big initiatives, then ask them about what are your top 3 initiatives this year? How does what you sell help them actualize that initiative? So we've got to get better at getting below the surface, asking deeper level questions. And you should start carrying your calculator around with you. Now, I know most calculators are on phones now, but you should have the calculator out and be prepared to demonstrate the future ROI for your customer. And if you can't do that, especially with executives, you're probably not going to win the deal. They want to know, if I invest money during a time where risk is heightened, can you prove out the ROI I'm going to get from that? And they're not going to spend money on anything where they can't see and feel an ROI. The other thing you said, Will, that I think is critically important for the salespeople that are listening and watching is that you said companies are now getting into their systems and processes. They're looking at how people are using their programs, they're using the processes and systems that they've built, they're using the platforms that they built. I'm doing the same thing as a CEO of a small company or a scaling company. I'm in the middle of that. Before we walked in, I'm in the middle of my CRM looking at how are we using these forms to build better reports to get more data. And this year I've shifted into, because I've moved from a time of complete abundance to I got to run this business in a different way. I want to know the data. I want to see it. I want to know how people are using things. I want to know that. As a sales professional, as an individual, yeah, your leaders are doing that. You need to be doing the same thing. How are you leveraging your technology? How are you leveraging your sales process? How are you leveraging the tools that your company has given you to do better in your role as a salesperson? I would stop and take a good look in the mirror and resolve, like make the decision that you're going to think like an executive, you're going to think like a CEO, you're going to think like an entrepreneur, and you're going to start using those systems to put yourself in position to do deeper level discovery so that you can prove out ROI and you'll close more deals.
No, I love that. And I think, you guys touched on, providing more value, really diving deeper, going back to some of those discovery basics. It's what's going to really help carry these sellers through this time. Jeb, Will, do you guys have any, recommendations in terms of what types of discovery questions should sales professionals be asking in this time that we're in?
Yeah, I think what Jeb was just hitting at is, you have to try and focus on the things you can control. And, a business owner down to an individual sales development representative, just not down to by any order of hierarchy other than that's the entry level spot into sales, let's say, right? The things that we can control are usually our outputs and our inputs of what kind of emotion we invest into the role, and our outputs being, how many calls, how many emails. I think what I've seen folks do on discovery really well lately is to really have a clear map over what happens when X occurs, right? And so if I get someone to agree to a meeting, what does that mean? What are they agreeing to? Who are they? What do I need to do to arm my team with everything possible before that meeting happens? To know as much as I can going into that meeting to make the most of my 30 minutes, all the way to, hey, someone just said, yes, send me the $1 million PO or the $1 million service order so I can go open a PO. What happens when you go request that PO? What's the last time you requested a PO of that size? Who are the folks that were involved? Who wasn't involved that you think might be involved? And everywhere in between. And I think discovery is often thought of as the first part of a sales process. But I'm noticing folks are applying just basic human logic-based inquiries about what happens when this happens? What's going to happen, Jeb, when your CFO says, yeah, I get that's a problem to you, but man, we don't have the cash flow for the next 90 to support that. And that's hypothetically speaking for Jeb at Acme Corp, right? CEO, CFO conversation like that. Well, what happens when we need to offset our cash flow for 90 days? I can go speak to the vendor about that. Well, that's great. That's a CEO asking that question, or a CFO asking that question to a CEO. So putting ourselves in the headspace as salespeople of kind of the next sequence of events throughout any number of interactions we have every day is often our most powerful discovery question. And it's also a value add to our clients, which is the trend that we're seeing. We can't be the client, vendor that's become a bit of a nuisance or me oriented, or I got to hit my quota. You better believe in 2021, you could say, I got a sales contest. I'd love to hit that. And I'd love if you could help me get there. And your buyer might say, yeah, that's great. Love to get you to that sales contest. Today, it's like, excuse me, what? I don't care about your sales contest. I got to pay my employees. How about that, right? So it's, hey, the last time you got this thing approved, or hey, when I booked this meeting with you, who else needs to hear about this meeting in order to keep things going forward, right? I'm seeing that work really well for some of our clients that are focused on kind of an upsell, cross-sell motion right now within their existing base. They have this almost sequence mapped out. Hey, when someone signs up for a free trial of our product, once they get to what happens when they get to their third time logging in 2 days, then it's time for us to do this. And that happens because, you know, it's very calculated and kind of formulaic and systematic, which is interesting. You know, you can apply that to, if I sell staffing services, what happens if that hiring manager has a great meeting with a staffing services salesperson? Are they going to have to go tell 3 people about that person so that they can onboard them? You know, those are kind of the maps of what I'm describing with discovery there.
Awesome.
And,
Jeb, anything to go off of what Will just mentioned?
yeah, we use a framework called SCORE, which is our part of Sales Gravy's training program. But if you just write SCORE down on a piece of paper, think about it like this. So I always begin with stakeholder criteria. So these are the individuals I'm working with. So we know that stakeholders make decisions based on their perceived personal outcomes and emotional outcomes. So I want to make sure that I understand, how does each stakeholder feel about the program? And I'm asking open-ended questions around this. The next is C, which is criteria for evaluation. So many of the questions that Will was alluding to are criteria for evaluation. And one question, by the way, that I find that I'm asking a lot more recently is walk me through your commitment to seeing this through to an outcome. And if I don't feel like that, I'll even say, it sounds like this isn't really something that you are committed to this year. I would so much rather hear that right now, because I don't have time to deal with people who aren't going to buy from me. So what's the criteria for evaluation? We send a PO this size, what happens next? The next is outcomes. So what are their desired outcomes? And what are the metrics that matter, MTMs? So what are the metrics that matter in their organization? How do they measure things? And overall, if you could nail down the outcomes, outcome is value, right? That's what you get from it. That's ROI. The R is real estate. What is their real situation right now? And this is really the art of discovery, especially in a time of higher perceived risk, is that stakeholders have a tendency to hide the truth from you. Not because they're trying to. Sometimes they think it gives them a little bit of leverage, but in a lot of cases, nobody wants to call their baby ugly. And I found that this year, as I'm trying to transform my company and grow it faster and scale it faster, I'm having to make some, look at my world and be truthful about it. And I've had some really good salespeople who have helped me get to that point and understand my core challenges. And then finally, what does the future state look like? So we take outcomes, but draw me a picture. Show me what this looks like for you. Where are you trying to get to? So if I walk through a series of questions that I put into those buckets, SCORE, what it gives me is a much bigger picture of what I'm working with, which allows me to build a business case. And I want you to pay really good attention to this, because I said business case, not proposal. A business case is what you give to an executive for why they need to make the decision, because this is going to transform their company. It's going to help them hit a target or a goal, and there's numbers attached to it. A proposal, in a lot of cases, looks like a pitch deck. We're awesome. You're awesome. This is going to be awesome. Here's some recommendations. We're solutionizing. That's a big difference. So start thinking about, how am I presenting to and talking to an executive, and how do I take everything I learned in discovery to build a business case that is unassailable, that they have to step into. And by the way, if I'm asking those questions around criteria, the questions that Will just taught you, which are brilliant questions, you won't get to the place where you're wasting your time on a business case with people who have no intention for buying from you, or no intention of leveling you up to the people that will buy from you.
No, that's great. And that's an awesome framework. I just took a mental note of that. That's an easy way to remember that. So thanks so much, Jeb, for that, and Will. I think, throughout this, talking about discovery, Will said, great, sign me up for the, $1 million PO. To get to that point, I'm sure along the way, I'm not a salesperson, but, there's definitely going to be some objection, throughout that sales cycle. Someone asked in the Q&A, how do you overcome when a company has unrealistic expectations about how long the investment in your product or service takes? That sounds like an objection to me. So you guys have any, advice for Jeremiah on that one, and any other objections that you hear frequently in times like this?
You go for it.
Well, I read the question earlier, Jeremiah, and my first thought is if they have an unrealistic expectation, my question would be why? And I might ask that question. But if I'm working with a company and they're saying, I want to get this from your product, and you as a consultant would look at them and say, I don't think you're going to be able to get that from my product. What I'm typically going to do is I'm going to be transparent with them. I'm telling them the truth. I'm going to say, let's get the calculator out and take a look at this objectively. It looks to me like you'll be able to get an ROI of this much at this amount of time. Now, could we accelerate that? Maybe, but it's going to require these things to be in place. Are you willing to commit to those things? But what I find is that if a customer is excited, that's usually what happens. They're excited, or they feel like they should be getting this much out of it. And I just sit down with them. I'm not pitching. I'm not selling. I'm just having a conversation, and I tell them the truth. They want to work with me more because they recognize that I'm in it for them and not me.
Let's say two things here. One, it's the you're going to hate me answer. Like, you got to know that early, just like Jeb. So I'm going to double tap with Jeb. You got to know that before it's an objection, right? You got to align to. And what, Jeb, is it SCOR or is there an E in the acronym?
Yeah, so stakeholder criteria.
Yep.
C, criteria for evaluation.
Yep.
O, are desired outcomes and metrics that matter. R, which is real state, so the real state challenges, and then E, end state.
End state, right?
Yeah, which would be their future state. It would be like I want to be able to draw a picture. I want them to draw a picture of what life looks like.
Right.
When they've integrated or implemented my product or service, and things have changed for them, things have transformed.
Hopefully we just helped out Emily, Rick, a couple others. I was looking for that too. I was like, Score Bar was a good chocolate bar I used to eat when I was younger. So maybe that. Anyway, the second thing I was going to say though is that this is a really good example of team selling opportunity here. If you're talking about an outcome that you're going to drive, or you're talking about ROI to drive, sometimes, especially in a downturn, we get scarcity mentality and we get afraid to tell our boss that we're having a hard time getting to our number, and we cling to an opportunity that we're having a hard time progressing. And then 90 days have gone by and it's March, your fiscal quarter ends up and you're like, I got to get this deal in, so if I can just tell them this one thing. But I guarantee everybody on the phone here, if you've been in a sales leadership role, if you are a sales leader, over communicating the bad news is always better than under committing and over forecasting. Over commit the bad news instead of under communicate and over forecast. What do I mean in the context of this? Hey, if I have an objection early, there's nothing wrong, as a reminder to those that already know it. I don't know for sure that I can support that. Can you help me understand what that would help you achieve, or how important that is on your set of criteria? Or how is it unfair to say that's going to blow up this whole relationship if I can't solve that one thing? Over communicate to your prospect, and they'll, no, it's an extra thing, but like, it would be awesome if you guys could do that too. Okay, I think I know the answer. This is my favorite way to say it. I think I know the answer, but can you give me like a couple hours or a day? Is it crazy for me to come back to you tomorrow at like 10 and I can kind of walk through this with you? I might even bring a resource on my side with me just to walk through and make sure we're fully on the same page. Oh yeah, no, well, that's fair. Hey, quick question. Who else would that impact if we could do this, that, and the other thing? And you keep layering in the team selling from both sides to be able to measure and rinse on value criteria. Because if I'm a buyer, I'm not going to give the real estate until I'm feeling comfortable and confident the person understands how to get me to an end state. Think about that as a salesperson, how beautiful that weapon is, right? I'm not going to give you my real estate until I feel comfortable that you could get me to my end state. And I'm okay with getting to my end state without all my criteria if I trust you with my real estate, right? And so if you think about the framework Jeb just walked through, my notepad just got full this morning, so I'm writing it on a dang envelope, right? That's almost more important to team sell with your team, to get them to bring their stakeholders to the table as well. Hey, can I bring my boss to the call so that we can make sure she hears exactly what you just said? Because I think I know how I'd answer it, but she's doing this too. I'd love to hear how she answers it. Hey, quick question. Who else would that impact? Or who else is it negatively impacting that you can't accomplish those types of things today? Or who else would note, that's something you're dealing with every single day. And you'll see how you create these roads and forks in the road in your deal journey. No, well, you know what? Don't worry about it, man. This is just an extra thing. You know, you're right. It's not the most important thing. It would be great to know long term, but what I really need from you is, and then I get to go back to what happens when I do that, right? And I think getting past the objection of unrealistic expectations or price or timing or anything, this is a really good time to team sell. I'll put a bow on it for my boss. She would love to be able to go to her leader and say, I've got this deal that's not baked. We can't really solve it. But I do know that we could solve it if sometimes a CEO cares enough about their pipeline that they might say, well, why don't we just build the thing, right? I've got dozens of examples that I won't share in this webinar of companies that have sold to ZoomInfo that have built something around that eventually. As we were already a customer, why don't I just build a thing? Because it's not going to just impact you. It's going to help a bunch of our other customers. And it's going to help us do X, Y, and Z solution, right? Or, you know, well, we don't do that, but let me introduce you to somebody that does a really good job of that, right? And I'll be clear and confident all the way through. So.
Very good. And there's a lot of people asking about SCORE. If you want, I've written a entire book that encapsulates this. But if you go to Amazon, I wrote a book called Inked, I-N-K-E-D, Inked. And inside of Inked, it breaks SCORE down. And exactly what Will said, that, by the way, was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. If everything that Will said, if you get in the middle of that and apply it, you'll find all that information in Inked.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you for answering those tips and giving some advice around the discovery there. Sort of related, you know, in terms of discovery and how to approach the sales deal, do you think there's any common mistakes that sellers make nowadays when they sell during, you know, an economic strain? And do you guys have any advice on how to avoid making those mistakes, or any personal experience maybe of your own?
I think what we should do, I think it'd be worth answering that with drilling a little further into, Jeb, what you're saying, a business case for an executive.
Yes.
Versus a pitch deck with a summary of options to proceed.
Yes.
Do you mind? I think there's people in the thing. I think I know how I kind of would visualize what scenario is. Why don't we talk about maybe the business case, because that's probably the more important of the two.
So the heart of a business case is, I'll give you another framework, just CRO. So C as in cat, RO. And so at the heart is how we're telling the story. And it's all about them. So a pitch deck is in a lot of cases, all about you, and it's generic solutions. What a business case does is it brings in solutions. We are solving problems, but solve problems only matter in terms of the outcome. So C sounds for challenge. So what is the challenge that they're facing? And that is their challenge, not your challenge. And you need to be able to articulate it in a way that makes sense to them. So for example, let's say I'm talking to a CEO and we're talking about growth, and the CEO says, well, you know, one of the things that just bothers me is I go out and I talk to my salespeople and they're like telling me they don't know who to call. So we've got a question about, you know, from Mario about what do I do? What's the anxiety when people don't have any money? Yep. So I might say challenge. I say, Will, you know, you told me that one of the things that really bothers you as a CEO of a scaling business is that when you talk to your salespeople, they're having a hard time figuring out who to target. Did I get that right? You say yes. And I say, well, one of the things that I would recommend is the ZoomInfo platform, and particularly how we're able to help your salespeople find exactly who is interested in looking for your type of service right now. And we're able to grab these different points and we're able to load up a list for your salespeople that makes it super easy. Now, what that does for you is, first of all, it gives you peace of mind that the money that you're spending for your salespeople is well-founded. What we found is with scaling companies like yours is that overall, when they employ this platform and they use it in this process, that their pipeline grows by 20 to 40% within the first 6 months. It sounds like that's what you're looking for. Did I get that right? So what you notice that I did was I articulated the challenge in your terms. This is how I understand stakeholder criteria. As I'm listening to a story, I'm talking about the stakeholder. Then I make a recommendation. But the recommendation is not, ZoomInfo's blah, 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 blah. It is integrate this particular process, system, workflow, and then I talk about the outcome, and I want to put dollars behind it. Now, if I had got into your business and I understood what your pipe looked like, I would say based on your current pipeline, we forecast that by implementing this, that we could improve your current pipe by $4 million in the first 3 months. That would result, based on your current close rate, of this much more net new revenue that would hit your top line. And that's what you told me that your investors are looking for. So the deeper I get into discovery, the more I build that out. But what I do is I articulate what you told me, real estate, right? The challenge is the real estate. And as Will said, they're probably not going to tell you their real estate. They're not going to open up their door unless they believe that you can get them to a future state. That's what we're doing early on in the sales process. That's building relationships. That's asking questions. We're doing that through discovery. Then I'm making a recommendation. This is what we do. So this is called a value bridge. So the bridge is challenge to the outcome. How do I bridge that gap? And I do that through a value bridge. That's my recommendation that is specific to them, articulated to them. Now I'll write this a little bit different because it's in a business case. And then finally, I'm articulating a planned outcome. What is the outcome? And I want it to be as measurable as possible. Now, sometimes the outcomes are purely emotional, and I need to articulate this is purely emotional. But the more I can get to the math, the more you're going to see executives' ears prick up, and they're going to lean in. They're going to go, okay, that's what I'm looking for right there. Because then they believe that you got it. Like you took the time to understand their business, and you're the person that they trust to solve the problem.
And let's say that we're in a crisis, right, Jeb? Or we're in a downturn, or we're in a recession, right? Executives are asked to go and trim almost immediately. Like even the most profitable businesses in the world are still going to be asked to go trim people, process, technology, product vision, scope. So, what better way than to make your solution airtight? We're not just talking about acquiring a new customer or upselling a customer, but these are motions within a crisis. I think you would agree. We did a webinar about selling the price increase with more of a customer set. What better way to build an airtight retention business case that the CFO's going through her hit list of stuff and she's just red line, red line, red line. She doesn't have any emotional attachment to any of the stuff or who bought it or what. And she can go through and it says, oh yeah, this one solved the problem of hiring and helped us identify candidates and fill candidates that stayed on for 6 months.
Yes. And
the value of that was saving us $500,000 a churn that we would have gotten on average between the first, month 3 to 4. Yeah. Okay. I don't need to ask any more questions about that. Because the best part about folks like Jeb, business owners, leaders, they're in the spot they're in because they don't overthink stuff to the point that they can spiral and kind of overanalyze beyond, no, this makes sense to me, let's move ahead. They need numbers and facts and data to prove that. They don't just go on gut always. But it's harder to get in front of that CFO to do the business review now when they're all kind of, running around trying to figure everything in the business out. So you got to make it really easy for your buyer to go in with non-jargony stuff. Hey, here's the impact of not solving this problem. Here's our commitment to solving it by March 30th. Here's what happens if we don't. Here's how we recommend we fix it. Here's an outcome we can expect. And I would also caveat to say it's a great opportunity to do the what happens when. What happens when you bring an ROI business case to your CFO? Do they laugh that out of the room and say, yeah, of course they're going to look like good on paper because what else are they going to do? They're a salesperson, right? I love asking that question. You know your finance leader better than anybody. I've never met them and I probably won't. Ha, ha, ha. Hopefully I do because I can do a better job presenting my value, right? But hey, what language do they speak? Are they more focused on time savings or are they more focused on dollars generated off dollars invested, or kind of somewhere else in between? Am I completely off? And then your buyer gets to say, I don't know, which goes into, are they qualified to be your champion buying a product in a crisis? Probably not. Or no, they do like that, but I think if I can get this, oh great, I've got this one case study that we can just pop a slide into the proposal or the business case that says, hey, the impact of not solving your hiring problems is going to generate this amount of churn over the next couple months. Here's an example of how we mitigated that problem for one other client. Here's the outcome they achieved. Is this aligned? Yeah, this is exactly what I need, right? And then that one little, hey, I really need to see that feature that you guys said you didn't have becomes, now my CEO doesn't care about that. They needed this solved. This is exactly what I need. This, I'm going to go get her to approve it. Right? I think that's something that's hard for a lot of sales leaders to accept, is you're not always going to get in front of the executive buyer. You want to get in front of the executive buyer, but if you can make it really easy to map out what that team looks like, and then build the trust to help it be really easy for them to get involved and still ask, that tends to be helpful.
Let me jump on my soapbox real quick, Becca, because Will said something super important. This isn't just about new sales. You have got to protect your turf. So if you're purely in new sales, this won't impact you. But if you're listening or watching and you're a business owner or you're an account executive or an account manager, if you manage customers, you got to protect your turf. There are unfeeling robots right now going through every spend at every company, and they're going to call you out and say, what value are you delivering? And if you're not close enough to your customer to be able to articulate that, or bring back a business case to say, you can't afford to live without me, here's why, then you're going to either lose your customer, that means you got a big problem of getting them back, or you're going to drop your prices in order to keep them, or drop services in order to keep them. And I had an experience with this just recently, and I'm going to give you a horror story. This is not how you do this, but we're doing the same thing as a business. We've been doing this since March. We're looking at every spend that we have, and we have a software program, it's a SaaS program that we've purchased. It's really expensive. And I started looking at it, and I'm like, we're not using this. We're not getting anything from it. So in earnest, I'm the CEO of the company. I reached out to the company and said, I need to talk to my account manager because this isn't happening. They sent me to a customer service center in the Philippines who, when I said, I need to talk to my account manager, this isn't working for us, I need to talk about what we're going to do, said, oh, you have a contract. And I said, yep, that's not going to work. And we spent a month. And then we finally got an account manager to show up, and the account manager says, hey, I'm your brand new account manager. This is after we sent him a nasty letter. How can I help you solve problems? And if you think about the train wreck that is this company, that they've lost our business. They'll never get it back again. But this is an expensive spend, and there was no account management process for being able to articulate how we can help you, or reselling us on the fact that we're not using it right and it can help us through a recession. If you're in that situation as an organization, you need to get this fixed really quickly, or you're going to bleed revenue. So what Will said, dead on the money. You got to be able to make your business case, whether it's a new customer or whether it's an existing customer, so that the executives say you are worth it. And if they can't say that, you're gone.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think you touch on something really important too, Jeb, which is they're a customer, like they can churn if they're not happy. So I really like how you kind of dove into that off of Will's point there. We're kind of running towards the top of the hour, so I wanted to go ahead and for all of the, both just sellers and sales leaders on today's session, I wanted to ask, how should a salesperson, approach going into a economic uncertainty or their day-to-day selling? Like, what mindset or mentality should they have? And then on the flip side, what should those sales leaders of those sales teams be doing to sort of help them navigate that? Will, Jeb, whoever would like to take the reins on that one.
Well, I want to answer Mario's question real quickly before we jump into that. And he says, how do I deal with the anxiety? There's no money out there to find. So we talked a little bit about how ZoomInfo can help them find this, find money. There's always money moving, Mario, always, always. So if your mindset is there's no money moving, you will never find money. If your mindset is there is somebody buying because they they've got a problem, they've got an issue, they got a challenge, then you're going to shift the way that you prospect and the way that you look in order to engage those particular prospects. It's going to be harder, don't get me wrong. And tools like ZoomInfo help you do that. My team uses this tool for this reason. It is one of our most valuable, I call it a weapon. I'm having a conversation with my rep in Australia who's saying, I don't know if I can do this and do this and do this. I'm like, let's go to ZoomInfo and let's take a look. And in 5 seconds, I'm able to go, here's a list of people, do this. So always money moving, always. In terms of leaders, Linda jumps in late, but she says, have you discussed executive desire for more confidence in forecasts and getting their teams focused on more profitable business and more profitable customers? So this is a great question that connects with what you just asked, Becca, and that is what leaders need to do is shore up the systems. Leaders have to spend more time coaching. Leaders have to lead their team back to the basics and fundamentals. A basic fundamental is sell profitable business. If you're selling business and you don't make any money at it, why are you wasting your time and effort? Your job is to generate a profit. So what is your system to help your salespeople qualify what profitable is? So, or do you have a situation where you're just telling them to go sell anything, and they're talking to all the people who are willing to talk to them, but not necessarily the customers that we really want? So for leaders in particular, and I want to hear Will's take on this. What I'm doing right now is I'm stopping, and I'm just telling you, me as a leader, I'm working right now a lot of hours, and we're going to have an amazing year. I'm stoked with where we're going. I'm already seeing the numbers come together. But I'm working on making sure that our numbers are visible, making sure that our data is visible, making sure that I'm monitoring our systems. I am making sure that our people are using our processes. I'm going back and I'm retraining our people on here's the 4-step process for this particular product or service that we offer. And the other thing I'm focusing on, Will, is I'm looking at where we have mediocrity in our system, and I am just determined to eliminate that mediocrity and focus on excellence and everybody doing their job. Because as we move into this recessionary period and this time of volatility, what I can't afford as a leader is to have loose ends. That surprised me. No surprises, no excuses. We got to be excellent. And that is, for me as a leader, that is a mission. Like it is my only mission. And you don't have you just don't have the luxury of taking your foot off that accelerator during this period of time.
I think that last piece, right? Like you have to consider inertia, forward momentum, marathon pace. Like you could be really tired and really exhausted and really skeptical. The answer is never to stop. And that might sound blithe or naive or ignorant or whatever you want to call it. If you're a CEO, founder of a small company, and you're like, I'm paying this sales gal, a ton of money, and I'm not getting the money back out of them. Like the answer isn't to fire that salesperson before you figured out, did you invest in the engine, right? Now, again, nothing's in a vacuum. You hired the wrong person. They don't show up to work. They lie to you. They're cheating you. They're telling you things are too hard. You got to cut bait eventually with someone who's not on the journey with you. For sure. I'm talking about, hey, I got a salesperson that I was so excited that I hired, and for some reason she hasn't closed much in the first 6 months, but I don't have all the things that she could have at another business to help her be successful. Now, I know money isn't unlimited. I know money doesn't grow on trees. I guarantee, as in life and business, we all spend money on stuff that you could reallocate to other things. And if you don't spend it on one thing, you're going to spend it on another, whether it's in time or money. And yeah, you might think I'm silly or biased to ZoomInfo. For a minute, I'll just say, if a sales leader isn't setting their salesperson, to have as many meetings every single day as possible, and you might think I'm crazy, with as little work on their part as possible to set those meetings up, then you might as well not be paying your salesperson to work at your business, right? Or you just might take that money and light it on fire. I'll say that again. if you're not doing everything in your power to put as many meetings on the calendar of the person who's selling for your business or the team of people, there's something fatally flawed in how you're going to go grow your business. Now, if you're a solopreneur and you were doing $2-3 million a year in business off of your existing customers for the last 5-10 years, and maybe you hired some extra salesperson to handle all the needs and uptakes you had for customer support, and you happen to grow a little bit, and now things are a little tight and you're not growing as much, maybe you're not trying to grow 10, 20, 40, 30%, 50%, 80% every year. I would probably ask why not. But maybe even that person, I still truly believe that the best sales organizations, and we witness it firsthand, they are not scalable if the best salesperson is the one prospecting for every single meeting on their calendar. They're just not. Because even if Susie's sales rep is really good at it, let's assume I'm talking about without a tool like ZoomInfo. Even if Susie's sales rep is really good at relationship building and networking and getting introductions, and somehow she always finds a way to get an introduction into every single territory that we ask her to break into, she is not going to want to or be able to, probably more likely, teach other people how to do what she does. That's just a way of life. There's a reason that there aren't, 100 LeBron Jameses in the NBA. If it was that easy, you would have that type of player on every single team. It's a work ethic thing. It's an inimitable thing that people have in them. So as a business leader, our goal has to be, sales leader has to be to tee up our folks with as many at-bats as possible. And I'll probably get some folks saying like, well, at-bats, quality over quantity. Nope. In a crisis, if your calendar is open, that is worse than having 10 unqualified meetings. I promise you that, and I'll go to my grave feeling that way, right? Because even if I have 10 unqualified meetings, that might turn into 5 referrals and 6 open opportunities in 7 months, and 1 person that buys from me now, and it's better than me being busy than it is me talking to 1 really good company every single day. And I think sales leaders have too many different tools and services out there that they could spend 20% of the cost of hiring another person to make their existing people more efficient. From a business case standpoint, every single business sales leader has the challenge of not hitting their number fast enough. Right? How could you not? What I would say too, there's a trend that we didn't talk about today. It's not really the audience, but, aligning to what your marketing team is doing and not trying to go reinvent what marketing is doing already is super important, even as a small team. It could be as simple as a branding exercise, but I bet you your marketing team is dying to get more meetings put on your sales reps' calendars so they can go and quantify their work every day. So, a webinar like today, Becca is going to get measured on how many folks attended, how many folks stayed, how many folks clicked in, how many folks took a meeting. As a sales leader, how can I work with Becca to say how many of these people would love to take another call with somebody on Will's team, right? And that should be a focus for every one of us on this call to make sure as sales leaders we're finding out what our company is already doing every single day and quantifying it. Because if your sales folks' calendars are blank, man, it's on us more than it's on them. And that might be an unpopular thing. I hope I riled some people up, but usually the case.
Yeah, no, it's always good to get the gears going there, Will. And thank you, Jeb, for kind of kicking off that question. What I was hearing from both of you was sort of this combination right now of, how do sales teams sort of gain that efficiency that they're looking for? And also, Jeb, to your point, that visibility into the metrics. And I think those 2 things are probably like great takeaways for the audience today is, that visibility, it really does help kind of bring the team together, and it makes sales and marketing, if sales and marketing are sharing like the same KPIs, the same goals, it helps everyone feel like they're on the same page, they're on the same team, which I think is a really good catalyst for like keeping up that motivation in these hard times. So really great takeaways there from both of you. We have about a couple minutes left, so I just wanted to maybe go through a few of the questions from the Q&A here before we wrap up, if you guys are down. So I saw one earlier come in from Caleb. They asked, how crucial will social selling be this year and later in the future? You guys have any? Yeah,
let's just take this year. So when we talk about social selling, think familiarity. So how crucial is it that people know who I am? How crucial is it that my customers see me as someone that they can trust? How crucial is it that I'm positioned as a person who is uniquely qualified to solve their problem? That's what you have to think about. That doesn't go away. This year in particular, where the fear that things can go badly are heightened, or that you might impact their business negatively are heightened, it makes all the difference in the world that people see you as someone that they can trust. And they're probably going to go search for you. And in today's world, if they do a search, it's going to be what they find on social media. So making sure that you've shored up, in particular, your LinkedIn profile, that you don't have stupid stuff on your Instagram and your Facebook and your Twitter and your YouTube and all those pieces, your Snapchat and TikTok. I'd be very careful with all the stupid stuff you put on TikTok so that people don't find that. I want to do business with people who are serious and confident. I don't want to do business with people who are silly. So you think about it that way. You're building familiarity. Now, learning how to use the tools in the right way so that you're prospecting, you're getting more meetings, you're converting those relationships and those connections into something that turns into business. Absolutely, you should continue to hone those skills and get really good at it. But if you think about social selling, start thinking about, what am I doing to shore up my professional profile so that I look like the person that people want to do business with? And what, as Will said, if that's aligned with my marketing organization and their messaging, it's even better, because now your customer, when they come to see you, they see consistency and synergy in the messaging, which gives them confidence that you and your organization have it together.
I wouldn't say that any differently. I think that's a great answer.
Well, it's like, check. Awesome. Yeah. There was another question that came through when we were kind of talking about discovery. Aisha asked, do you usually have a prep call before your discovery, to set an agenda, et cetera? Do you guys have any tips on, if they do a prep call, what should that kind of look like?
Oh gosh, we're gonna run out of time. But yes, this is near and dear. I'll try to answer this in a simple way, and then we can talk more on another webinar probably about this for 20 minutes. But remember that going into your call, you should 100% prepare to understand as much about your organization you're selling to, where they are, state and time, not just geographically and time of day, but like, where is their business? What's the health of their company? Any information you can learn from public data, from ZoomInfo, from earnings data, whatever. Saw an earnings report the other day that cited ZoomInfo data in their earnings report, which was kind of humbling. It was fun to see that. But what I would make sure we do is understand that your agenda doesn't matter. An outcome matters. So I don't want to have a prep call for 30 minutes with an account team to talk about our agenda that we're going to introduce our client team for the first 5 minutes. I want to make it very clear, and I'm going to use that framework now. What's the challenge we're talking about? What's the recommended outcome we're driving to? And what are the outcomes that we're actually going to show and achieve, and how do we prove that out? And on every single call, I got to make sure I prep going in. Who are my stakeholders? What's the criteria? What are the metrics that matter and outcomes that we're going to track? What's their current state? What's their end state? I mean, that is what your agenda and prep should be. I would advocate heavily, especially in a crisis, that you're going into a call cutting out things like, hey, tell me about your role, or let me tell you about all of us and our titles. Like, that stuff doesn't have a place at the table in 2023. And who else should we be introducing ourselves to is a lazy version of, hey, I saw that Mary was this person. Is that still the right person? How involved are they in this type of stuff? You have to bring your client to the table and show them what you've done ahead of time in your research and what outcomes these pieces of information are supposed to drive, as opposed to, here's the agenda of what we want to cover today. I'm sure Jeb has been sold to both ways. And so he probably, there's the smile. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Jeb, anything to add to that before we wrap up here?
I'll go back to check the box. Perfect answer. I mean, there's nothing I can add to that. Brilliant.
Great. Well, you guys make things so easy. Well, we're about 5 minutes out, so I wanted to just give a couple minutes. First of all, thank you, Jeb and Will, for coming on today's session. Really, really loved hearing some of your concrete tips on, how sellers and sales leaders can sort of navigate this unfamiliar environment, both as a new seller or as an experienced rep as well. That was just really awesome to hear about. And then for our audience, thank you for all your questions. Without those questions, we kind of just go with the flow, but those were some excellent questions, and Jeb and Will obviously had some great responses. If we didn't get to your question, Jeb and Will's social LinkedIn is posted in the side of your webinar console. Feel free to reach out to them if there's anything you'd like to follow up on. Lastly, quick reminder that you will get the recording for this webinar within the next couple of days, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And thank you so much for everyone joining us today, and I hope Jeb, Will, everyone here has a great rest of their week.